Welcome to the Forefront 5. I'm your host, Dr. Betsy Wernli, and today I have my favorite guest so far. I can say this without offending all of my past superstars, and in a moment, you'll know why. My guest today is my oldest thus far. He knows me better than any of my other Forefront 5 spectaculars and has had a major part in really shaping me into who I am today. Yes, today, celebrating Father's Day, I have the one and only Paul Berry, my dad. You may be wondering why in the world would he be a good podcast guest, but he's really an interesting guy, fascinating, quite actually. Dad, welcome. Don't be nervous. For my listeners, Paul is very humble. He breaks out in hives when talking about himself and is very self-deprecating. In fact, Dad, should I tell the story about you receiving your Letterman sweater at the University of Wyoming?
Do I have a choice?
No, you don't have a choice. Dad is so humble that when he received his Letterman sweater at the University of Wyoming, he tore the letter, the W, off the front of the sweater. And when my mom asked him why he did that, he said, well, so that I can wear and use the sweater. Anyone who knows him, though, knows that he is, in fact, a first-class 67-year-old stud. Welcome, Dad. I'm excited to have you.
Well, good morning to you, Betsy Boo. And I did just have a birthday, too. So I am 68 now.
68.
Yeah.
Worst daughter ever. Well, you look so much younger. You are 68. Well, tell me why you chose your song. We always start the Forefront 5 with a song. And I asked you what your song was, and you said it was one from Nickelback. Tell us about it.
Well, Nickelback is my favorite group. And if you listen to the lyrics, it really speaks truth and revelation. I'll read them to you. Each day is a gift. Leave no stone unturned. Take the path less traveled. What's worth the price is always worth the fight. Don't take the free ride. Donate every dime you had. Swear up and down to God above. Life's Revelations. Great song.
Those are good ones. So if today was your last day was Dad's song, it's got a little edge, a little rock, and I think Dad has a little edge. So let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Paul Berry. He grew up in Deadwood, South Dakota. He is, when we classify personality types and we say type A, Dad is a type AAA person. He's super driven. Sometimes so type A, he's unpleasant to go on vacation with because he's go, go, go. But that type A personality really drove him to his success. He went on to have quite a career in athletics, and we'll cover the bulk of his athletic achievements in this podcast. But Dad, tell me, let's start from when you were a kid. Tell me about what sports or hobbies you participated in as a kid.
Gosh, I was really fortunate to be raised in a home where my father, he was a real innovator. He always tried new things all the time. And number one, I would say that our family was very involved in skiing. But we had all sorts of toys. Dad, he worked really hard, but one of his favorite sayings was work hard, but play harder. And we had go-karts. We did a lot of fly fishing together. We had horses. We played soccer, football. We just traveled all over the country. My dad, he was one of the first people in South Dakota, maybe the 5-state area, that built his own motorhome. He didn't build it, but he bought a new truck. He cut the top out of the truck, took the box off, and he had DJ Camper Sales build a camper, and it would house 5 kids and 2 adults. And that man put 300,000 miles on that camper traveling around the United States. So yeah, we were really fortunate. We got to do a lot of different things.
But you did some things. So you did tons of family stuff. Grandpa Bill got you really involved in sports, but you had a lot of just freedom and unsupervised time with your go-karts, with your horses. Tell about your horse named Champ.
Oh gosh, Champ, he was a really high-spirited, he was a cross between American Saddle and Quarter Horse. And that horse, he wasn't a knothead, but boy, you had to be alert and stay on him because he was full of vinegar and fun to ride. He'd go up any hill you pointed him at, and just had a lot of fun with him. I would take that horse and I'd pack a lunch and throw it in the saddlebags and take my fishing pole, and I'd head down to this pond that was down by the rodeo grounds in town. So I'd ride the horse through town down to the rodeo grounds, and I would fish at this one pond. And at the time, I didn't know there weren't any fish in there, but I never did catch a fish. But
But you had fun and you were a boy's boys. But I think you learned how to work too. Grandpa started you out. Tell what Grandpa did for a living and what your first job was.
well, he had a Culligan water conditioning business, and so there was a lot of different things that we could do as kids there. But he always made us work. He always made us save half of what we made, and to this day, it's, I still work hard at saving money and being spendthrifty. But anyway, one of the things we had to do, it wasn't the most fun, but back in the day, you didn't have plastic bottle gallon jugs, and so he would go get the gallon jugs from Coca-Cola that had leftover syrup in them, and we had to soak them in vats and get the label off and get the syrup out of there, and then we'd refill it with distilled water, and he'd sell it to dry cleaners and Homestake Mine down in the Neutrino mine and things like that. And I worked all summer to save up for a 10-speed bicycle. And at the end of the summer, I had $50, and I went to Rapid to get this 10-speed bicycle, and I only had $50, and it was $75. So he kicked in, and the other $25, and I was very grateful. That was my first purchase. But
Well, with his labor, with his how much he paid you per hour, I think he probably ended up ahead. He paid Dad 25 cents an hour to work all summer. So that's awesome.
Yeah, things are a little different today. We can't even hire kids for $10 an hour to do the same work. But I think my favorite job at Culligan was when I was 12 years old. Dad started letting me drive the truck to the dump, and so I'd load the truck up with all the garbage from the week, and I'd drive down to the dump. And I was kind of a short guy, and I had a 1-ton pickup, and so I learned to sit on books and dip down under the steering wheel and shift gears and bounce back up and drive to the dump. And then when I got the garbage out of the back of the truck, then I got my 22 out with a box of 22 shells, and I shot rats. And when I ran out of 22 shells, I headed home. But I got to be a pretty good marksman at 12 years old. And one time I got picked up by the deputy sheriff going back to the shop, and he said, "Does your dad know you're driving?" And I said, "Yeah, he knows." And he said to me, "Does he know he's liable?" And I didn't even know what liable meant. And I said, "I guess so." And he said, "Okay, drive on."
Oh, if times were still the same, driving at 12, taking your pistol to shoot rats at the dump. But I think it really formed you into being an independent thinker. And I think that's missing with a lot of kids today. Let's move on to recreation. So you guys worked hard, but you recreated even harder. You had lots of fun. And you spent a lot of time, I think, at the lake in the summers in South Dakota. Tell me about what you did at the lake.
Well, we learned to be pretty good slalom skiers. We skied a slalom course, and one summer I got to spend a summer out at Keyhole Reservoir, and we got to be a pretty accomplished slalom skiers, and that was really fun. And then one of the other things we did, Dad was kind of an innovator. He bought these Delta wing kites, and we would have trick skis on, and we would go behind the boat. We had like 300 feet of rope, and so we would tow and get off the water and start flying up. And we'd get up there around 200 feet above the water, and then we would cut loose from the kite and then fly it down and land on the water again. And we had a lot of fun with that. We had some pretty close calls, and they were pretty dangerous, but We had some crashes. Nobody got hurt real bad, but Dad decided we better get rid of them before someone got killed.
Sounds like something illegal, but maybe might have developed your love for kiting, which we'll talk about later. So Dad lives in South Dakota, and it's warm and beautiful in the summer, but it is cold in the winter. So you have to have a love for winter sports. And Dad's winter sport that he grew to love as a kid was ski jumping. For those of you who watch the Winter Olympics, you know, common names like Bodie Miller and Lindsey Vonn are heard, slalom skiers. They're definitely crazy high adrenaline in their top speed events. But when I watch the Olympics, specifically the Winter Olympics, the truly crazy folks are the ski jumpers. So Dad, let's cover ski jumping, your sport. Tell me what age you were when you started jumping and how you became comfortable going off eventually a 90-meter ski jump.
Well, when we were young, we spent every weekend through the winter up at Terry Peak, and we had a series of ski jumps up there. And then we would, most of the time in the morning, we would ski jump, and then in the afternoon we'd go do alpine events or cross country events. But so we competed in all 4 events growing up, and then we specialized in ski jumping. As we got older. By the time I was a freshman in high school, basically just specialized in ski jumping. And then we just traveled all over the country. We would, you just work your way up to bigger hills. I mean, we traveled to, you know, Crested Butte, Colorado, Aspen, Summit County, Frisco, Bush Lake, Minneapolis, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Brattleboro, Vermont, Middlebury, Vermont, and actually went to Alaska for the junior national championships. I actually got to go to Norway for a month in college and train. So it was just something that the thrill is just hard to describe. And since that event is over in my life, that's one thing I just remember as the most fun I've ever had in my life was ski jumping. So
to explain, it must just be the most amazing. Is it fear? Is it adrenaline? What is it? When I've been at the top of one of those ski jumps in Steamboat, particularly. You always used to take me to the top and look down, and it looked petrifying. So what do you experience at the top of one of those ski jumps? Explain your emotions.
Well, when you started skiing 90-meter hills, the conditions were such a lot of times where it was very, very challenging, and I was scared to death a lot of times. And when you jump into that end run and you start down, you get in a crouched position, there's no turning back. You can't snowplow. So it's, you make the commitment and you got to go. And I had some bad crashes, and like Iron Mountain, Michigan, on a 90-meter hill where the wind would blow and it'd knock your skis up and hit your chest. And one time I tipped over, but I never got hurt on a 90-meter hill. But I always had a deep respect for a 90-meter hill because the conditions weren't always quiet. The conditions may be really icy and scary going down the end run. The track wasn't very good. So yeah, I have a deep respect for bigger hills, and maybe that's one of the reasons that I didn't get hurt really bad on a 90-meter hill. But anyway,
was that the biggest hill is 90 meters?
At that time, yeah. Now they're bigger. They're going farther than that. 110-meter hills, basically. They'll fly that far.
So for the listeners, you start at the top, you start down, you're gaining speed, and then you're just launched. And you see, it's a point system, right? For style and how far you land, how far you can fly and land. So at what point in that jump is the highest rush? Is it after you're done and you land? Is it while you're flying in the air? Like, where is the highest adrenaline spike?
Well, it's definitely after you end the takeoff, on the end of the takeoff, and you go into the air, and things are just quiet, and you're just flying through the air, and your skis are up in front of you like this, and you're pushing on the air, and you drive over your skis and fly, and there becomes a point in time when you have to pull out of it and land. So the flight through the air, you can control where you go in the air with your hands to the side, and it's kind of like skydiving, you know, but you know, just
Well,
a little bit different.
I actually have a big blown up picture of my dad in flight, in the air, in my house. And it's incredible because there was no padding. The skis were much, much different. The equipment nowadays is much lighter, but no helmet, zero protective equipment. They just wore stocking caps. So pretty cool. But, you know, it took a long time to get to that, you know, elite level that you got to, you know, on the US ski team as a ski jumper and a collegiate athlete training in Norway. You did a lot on the off season and lots of dryland training. Tell us what you did to condition and be the best ski jumper you could be.
Well, probably dryland training, you know, when I was young, we probably didn't do much of that really. We just played hard and, you know, rode bikes, and we were just kids. But in high school and college, did a lot of different things like run stadium steps, frog leap up stadium steps, and did a lot of running, bike riding, and then we make these series of hurdles where you had one leap in between each hurdle, you know, and so you got to the point where you could leapfrog over these hurdles, whether they're 30 to 36 inches high. I can't even remember how high we could jump, but that was really a great thigh burner and thigh builder. One of the funny things that we had a kind of a funny ski coach in college. His name was Quentin Skinner, and he was a kind of a hillbilly from Pinedale, Wyoming. He was a cowboy, and for doing different workouts, we would have contests pushing cars, and it's quite unique. And so anyway, it was really a leg burner, because he'd like make you push cars until you just could hardly stand up. But the fun part about that one, the University of Wyoming had a pretty good wrestling team, and so we challenged them to pushing car contests, and the wrestlers never got over the fact that the ski team would kick their heinies pushing cars. So that was kind of interesting. So
that's awesome. And I think it's a little known fact how much conditioning you guys would run. You know, 10-mile runs were very common, lots of weights, lots of stadiums. You have to be in incredible shape to be a successful ski jumper. So if you haven't gotten it by now, Dad, you know, from South Dakota, developed into quite the ski jumper. He was recruited by many universities that had ski teams, and decided on the University of Wyoming over the Air Force Academy, right, Dad? And tell why you didn't choose the Air Force Academy. I think this tells a lot about where your priorities were back then.
Well, unfortunately, my priorities were probably messed up, but it is what it is. I had an offer to the University of Wyoming, and they had a really good ski team. They had a pretty good history of a good ski team. We got second in the nation twice at the University of Wyoming. And so my priorities was to go to the better team that I could. And I did have an offer to go to the Air Force Academy, and probably could have had an opportunity to fly jets, which would be pretty cool, and probably somewhat of a mistake. But Wyoming treated me well.
Never look back and question your priorities, because I think skiing brought you a lot, and being a collegiate athlete teaches us a lot. Tell about the hills and the equipment. Not only the skiing equipment was pretty antiquated nowadays, but the hills, you didn't have packers or the standard modern day equipment. How did you guys pack your hills?
Oh gosh, it was really a challenge for me, because I really didn't have many other peers to help keep the hill in condition at the time when I was in high school. And so you'd pack the hills with skis, and if you couldn't get it hard enough with skis, you ended up boot packing it by foot. And I spent hours and hours and hours trying to keep a 60-meter hill in condition. It was really really a task. I mean, I didn't get as many jumps as I should have got, but you know, a lot of places they have a lot of help and everything to keep a hill in shape, but I didn't have that. But in 1971, the NCAA ski championships were held at Terry Peak, and there was no way I was going to get this hill in the right kind of condition it needed to be for a national tournament. And there was an engineer from Homestake that designed a roller that was 10 feet wide and about 4 feet in diameter. And so he got a winch out of a decommissioned missile silo that were all being decommissioned after the Cold War. We had those missile silos all over South Dakota. So he got the winch, and he made this packer so it'd go up and down the hill. He had a series of pulleys up on the hill, and so it would go up and down the hill and pack it really hard. And so we put on a really good tournament, and really thank that engineer from Homestake that did that project.
But wasn't there a big disaster? There were contestants all over the hills and coaches, and something happened with the, you know, state-of-the-art missile silo rigged roller cables. Tell about that.
Well, it was probably somewhat jerry-rigged because some of the pulleys were hooked to trees. You know, it wasn't like we had a great mechanical system where you'd have big towers held in with concrete and this and that. So one of the pulleys was on the takeoff part of the jump, and where it would roll up and down from there. And there was a guy by the name of Somali that was standing on the knoll watching the roller go up and down the hill with the cable going up and around him. And all of a sudden, one of the pulleys broke loose on one of the trees, and the cable was starting to snap, and the roller went down the hill, and Somali ran and jumped, and the cable went over the top of his head, and he ended up sliding all the way down the hill. And when he came to a stop down there, everybody was laughing at him and everything. And one of his friends said, "Somali, if you would have had a cigar in your ass, you would have looked like Halley's Comet."
Definitely something that doesn't happen to a Division I NCAA tournament nowadays, but it's good story, and the best quote ever, the best quote that lives forever. So tell me, when you realized, you know, you did all this work growing up, you realized, man, I'm good enough. I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to get a full ride. I'm going to be a Division I athlete.
Well, when we were growing up as kids, there was a special time of the year that was really special where I got exposed to Olympians, and that was during Thanksgiving time. And it started probably about when I was in 7th grade, but we always went to Winter Park, Colorado at that time because they generally had enough snow to jump on their 60-meter hill, which isn't a big hill, but it was a good starter for the year. And I always looked up to those guys. They were the guys out of all those people there was the Olympic team there every year. And so it was really quite fascinating to see these guys, and it was really fun. I mean, there was people like a lot of people from Steamboat that were there that were Olympians, and it was just a special time. And when I started competing in high school, we got to go to from my freshman through my senior year. I was able to go to the junior national championships every year, and we competed against all the divisions in the nation: the Eastern Division, Rocky Mountain Division, Central Division, and Eastern Division. And I was very fortunate my junior year to get second in the nation at that was at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So at that point in time, I thought I was on track, and worked really hard. And one of the reasons I picked Wyoming, because we got to train at Steamboat, Colorado. So it's just kind of how things matured.
Destiny. And you guys traveled, you know, to make this happen. Kudos to Grandpa Bill with his camper that we talked about. You guys used the camper during the winter. You didn't stay in hotels. How many people did you sleep in that camp or at these races?
Oh gosh, it would, we had bunk beds in there on each side, and somebody would sleep on the floor, but we would have 5, 6 people in there, and this camper had heat in it, had water in it, and we would take that camper and we'd drive to the area and we'd park it at the bottom of the jumping hills, and we ate there, we slept there, and it was just quite a deal. I really took it for granted at that time, but looking back now, what my dad did at that time, he was just way above his time to design a camper that we could stay in when it was, sometimes it was below zero, and we had quite the experience with that.
Missed a lot of school, but got an education in sports, and you did pretty well. You're a pretty smart guy. You're a business guy now, so it must not have impacted your academic career too much. So then you got an offer. You went to University of Wyoming. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were one of the only Americans on the team with a scholarship. Is that right?
Yeah, I was the only American on the jumping team. The rest of the team was from Norway, and I learned a lot from those guys. They were good skiers. At that time, the college coaches for skiing, they recruited very heavily from Norway, and so it was very tough to compete against that talent. So
that just shows what a exceptional stud you are.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that.
American, but that for the listeners, that explains why he spent quite a bit of time training in Norway, because he had Norwegian teammates in college. So shifting back, we always say God had a plan. You didn't go to the Air Force Academy. First of all, you married like a super hot woman who went to University of Wyoming. So you got a good spouse. Tell us what you pursued as a career and how you chose it.
Well, I really didn't have too much guidance from home on that one. I jumped in the car by myself and I drove 5 hours to Laramie, and I showed up at the field house and looked around the field house, and I saw signs up for engineering, nursing, liberal arts, on and on and on, all these different careers. And then I looked over there and said, School of Business and Business Administration, and there was a line there. And I thought to myself, well, if there's a line there, that must be a pretty good one. So I got in line, and I I got a degree in business administration.
Well, I think it did you well, because you became quite the businessman and did very well for our family. But that's a heck of a way to choose your major. I think it's safe to say your major was at that time ski jumping. But you had to get a career too. But tell what your favorite class was. I always got a kick out of, you were a business major. You became a great businessman later on in your life after your jumping career, but your favorite class was?
I had really 2 favorite classes, and one of them was the meat cutting course. And in the fall, it was really a fun time because all the wild game that came through that place, we cut it up for them and we packaged it. We made salami, we made all sorts of jerkies and really unique stuff. And to this day, I still use it and cut up all my own game, and I know what cuts I'm cutting up. And so I still use that today. And the other thing I use a lot and really enjoyed is my welding class. So I minored in meat cutting and welding.
Well, note to kids, don't feel penciled in by your majors. Take some other fun classes that you'll also use the rest of your life. That's great. So we talked about your time in Norway. Tell us about training there, who you stayed with, etc.
Well, I was very fortunate in my junior year to spend the month of Christmas break in Norway. And so I got to stay with a a fellow ski jumper from Wyoming and his family there. And it was really a great experience. It was really kind of lonely at times because it was the first time I ever been in an environment where I didn't speak the language. And that was kind of tough. It took me a while to get used to that. But anyway, I kind of got used to it. And it was only light 2 hours a day, which probably didn't help my attitude either. It's the first time I ever was in an environment where that's the case in the winter. And so consequently, we skied under lights all the time. And the lighting was really good. And that was really a good experience. But a lot of the time it was cold as heck too. You never saw the sun. It was not really that pleasant. But anyway, we had a lot of fun there. My quality of skiing definitely increased, but yeah, it was a great experience.
Tell about Norway. You guys worked hard, but you partied hard. The Norwegians party pretty hard. So tell about what you took away that impressed you about their drinking in Norway.
Yeah, they do party hardy. I mean, they they're a little bit tough in that area, but boy, one thing that never happens over there, you never drive a car. If you went to a party, you stayed there all night or you rode the train home, but no one ever drove after partaking at a party. I can't remember what the penalty was at that time, but I think it was like a lifetime. I think you got your driver's license, lost it for the rest of your life. And so you just didn't do that.
I wish America took that same standpoint. So don't let Dad fool you. He trained hard, but I think he partook in some Norwegian parties as well. So Dad was also skied with the National Olympic team. He was on the junior national Olympic team in high school, and then with the Olympic team later on. We talked about you getting second in the nation on the junior Olympic team. And for my listeners, one of the things, as a kid, you always want to look at your parents' mementos, especially someone that was skiing on the U.S. Olympic team. He took, in his brilliance, he took all of his medals, trophies, and his U.S. ski team clothes, and he discarded them. So I have nothing to show for that. So thanks, Dad. That was a silly move.
Well, we just didn't have room for all that stuff.
Oh, goodness. So tell us about, you're on the U.S. Olympic team, but then to go to the Olympics, you go to the trials. Tell us about your unfortunate Olympics experience.
Well, I was not on the Olympic team, but I was on the junior national team, which I competed every year for 4 years in high school. And it's a group of the best skiers in the nation at the time. And I was very fortunate to get second in the nation in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. But, basically I was kind of on track to ski well. And I just had a really bad accident in Steamboat, Colorado, which ended my career.
So to be on the Olympic team, you were training with the Olympic team. So you were on the U.S. ski team. Dad's super humble. And you go to the trials and then you advance to the Olympics. Which Olympics were you on track to ski in?
Well, I was hoping to make the 76 Olympics in Innsbruck, but that just didn't happen.
So tell us what happened. Terrible PTSD, I'm sure, but tell us what happened. Describe it.
Well, we trained most of the time in Steamboat, Colorado, which is only 2 hours from Laramie. So we'd go over there like on Friday after school, and we'd train the weekend and go back home Sunday night. And when we got there that Friday night, the conditions were really bad. It had snowed, and so we had to do a lot of work on the hill to prepare it and pack it and everything. We were hoping that it would be in good condition in the morning, be hard. You need a hard surface. You don't want the conditions to be soft. And so the next day, we started skiing. We had skied quite a while, and then on one jump, I landed and I landed in a softer area, and basically went down in a seating position, dragging my hands, and my right ski caught the snow, and it went out to the right, and then I just rolled over the top of my right knee, and I heard a big crack, and I thought I broke a ski, and both skis did come off, but when I ended up at the bottom of the hill, I was in excruciating pain, and my right foot was at a 90-degree angle to my thigh. So I had torn every medial ligament, both cruciates. The only thing really holding my lower leg on was the outside skin and the lateral ligaments. So yeah, it was a very, very bad accident.
What do you remember when you're sitting there laying there at the bottom of the hill?
I just couldn't believe the excruciating pain I was in. It was just unbelievable. I just had never been hurt like that, and it just was something I'll never forget. It's just
so
horrible.
I'm sure they called 911, an ambulance came.
Yeah, we had an ambulance there, and they took me to the hospital there, and the orthopedic surgeon that was there, he said that this problem was way over his capabilities. And so the ski team, they loaded me up in the back of the Suburban of the University of Wyoming, and we took off for Denver. And Dr. Lightholt, who at that time, he was a physician, the orthopedic surgeon for the Denver Broncos, he tried to patch me up the best that he could.
And didn't do the best job, at least not a modern job. And you know, it sounds like this was the end of your ski career. For the listeners, his spot then was taken by two guys that were routinely behind him in the rankings, and Innsbruck did not happen, and that was the end of his career. So it's not like modern days where they can patch up your leg. They did the best they could. But I think you had a very long time in a plaster cast, went back to school. Tell us about that.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was kind of a trying time. We lived at the time I lived with three other guys, and we lived off campus, probably about 6 or 7 blocks, somewhere in there, from the School of Business building. And the only way I could get there, I had a cast up to my hip, and I got pretty strong on crutches, that's for sure. And I think he even put some studs in my crutches so I didn't slip on the ice. So I got pretty good at that. And then after a while, after I got a little better shape, I did learn to drive my 47 Willys manual transmission Jeep by having my right leg over on the passenger seat, and then double clutching and shifting that manual with driving a manual Jeep with one leg. So
well, your 12-year-old driving experience helped you with that, I'm sure. So ski careers ended, totally crushed. Can't imagine, you know, this is where you had spent your entire life dedicated to this sport. Somebody else goes to the Olympics, and you get to watch the people that you had beat routinely perform in Innsbruck. So you have to shift your focus. You have to get over the disappointment and shift your focus to something else, something fun other than school. And quite frankly, something that gives you the same adrenaline rush, right? So what did you choose?
well, our family always participated in water sports, and we were at the lake all the time. And Dad and I, we started sailboarding way back when, in 1985, and became pretty accomplished at that. And so we would go to the Columbia River in Oregon. We did our local lakes here. We'd go to the ocean, and from there I took up kiteboarding, which is you fly a kite either on a twin tip or a surfboard, and foil board. But yeah, we just spent a lot of time learning these new water activities. And I'm sure you remember the times when it was blowing like crazy and cold and everything, and you're in the camper playing with Barbies, and when it was nice, you were outside. But yeah, we sailed when it was windy. It didn't matter what the temperature was.
So it was your new adrenaline rush, and then you extended out to the ocean, and you really developed your love for the ocean and sailing on the ocean. Have you had any close calls in your adrenaline seeking in the ocean?
Well, there was only one time in Hawaii where I thought I was gonna drown, but I got lucky and got out of it. Um, one time in Maui at Hukipa, I was out kiteboarding and riding waves and everything, and then the wind quit on us, and my kite had fallen out of the air, and you have these 30 meters of lines out there. You have 4 lines, and you got 30 meters of them, and so you got to get control of all this line and roll them up on your bar, and then try to get to your kite and do a self-rescue. Well, what happened was the lines, I wasn't successful. By the time the waves washed me into the reef, my lines got tangled up around my ankles, and when the waves would hit the kite, they would pull me underwater because the lines were hooked to the reef. It's kind of hard to describe, but the waves kept coming and hitting the kite, and it would pull me underwater. And then when I'd come back up, I'd take a breath, and then I'd go back down again when another wave would hit me. And I don't know how long that was taking place. It was probably less than 5 minutes, but I didn't really know if I don't think I could have made it 10 minutes without drowning. And then fortunately, a guy saw up above that I was in trouble, and he ran down, and he was able to get control of my kite. And so the waves wouldn't pull me under, and I got untangled and survived.
And went back out kiting that same day or the next day. It doesn't seem to affect him. And you've had tons of shark experiences, whale experiences, and you just seem to love the ocean. So we went from ski jumping to windboarding or sailboarding, and then kiteboarding. And now tell us what your new endeavor is.
Well, foil boarding, it's called kite foiling and wing foiling. But foiling is, I wish I had a picture of one, but it's a foil that goes underwater, and it looks like a wing, a small wing, and it lifts you up out of the water, and you're standing on a board that the mast is about 36 inches long, and it lifts you up out of the water, and you can just fly through the water effortlessly and really, really quiet. And it's really fun. It's a new sport for old guys.
I'm not sure it's for old guys. You've had all kinds of shark chasings and all kinds of things, but you seem to eat it up. I think it satisfies your prior ski jumping adrenaline rush. So just a few questions about you in general, shifting from your sports. Who was your role model, and who do you try to emulate?
Oh gosh, there's no doubt it was my father. Yeah, he was a dear friend, and he was disciplinarian too. I mean, he didn't try to be my best friend, but he just ended up being my best friend because we spent a lot of time together. But Dad, he taught us the things in life that were important.
What lessons did you use in raising me?
Well, gosh, that's a loaded question, isn't it? But well, he and like yourself, we taught you how to work, and taught you how to save. We disciplined when we needed discipline. That wasn't really all that difficult with yourself, that's for sure. We didn't try to be your best friend, but we tried to spend a lot of time together. We never let you kids have devices. I think back in that day, I don't know what the heck is a Nintendo. I guess that was the only thing available at that time.
And we had computers. The cool kids had like the Oregon Trail on their computers, but yeah, Nintendo's was the cool thing, and we never were allowed that.
Yeah, but We uh, Dad always taught us, to participate in sporting events like, soccer, football, skiing, um, and just whatever was available. I competed in dirt bike racing and this and that, but I think one of the most important things that Dad taught us is that when the dinner bell rang, you came home. We always ate together and prayed together.
100% have a love for family and a love for God, and that's a huge thing you instilled in my life and what I instill in my boys every day. What do you think is the hardest thing you've had to go through in your life?
Before I answer that, though, I wanted to add that I've had this conversation with other parents, and that don't think that sporting events are important, and I totally disagree with them. Maybe there's sometimes people put too much emphasis on the sporting events, and kids don't have enough individual time. But I think every kid should participate in one sport. You don't have to be good at it, but it teaches them to win. It teaches them how to lose. It teaches them self-confidence. It teaches them how to get along with coaches and stuff like that maybe they don't like. I mean, it teaches them in life that you may have a boss that you don't like, but you learn how to deal with situations that you're not going to get in a school environment. So anyway, that's a real important thing for raising kids.
100%. So hardest thing you've had to do in your life or go through in your life?
I think most of all, sometimes family can be the hardest obstacle. I'll just leave it at that.
I hope you're not talking about me.
No, not our family.
What's the best thing that's happened in your life?
Oh gosh, by far, when I met my bride.
How many years have you been married?
45 in August.
Awesome. And a relationship that I emulate every day. Pretty awesome. They're friends and still think each other are the best thing in the world. So you won the lottery with that one. Do you have a favorite saying?
Oh gosh, I have a couple of them I always remember. Dad saying is work hard but play harder. And then the other one is the harder you work, the luckier you get. Some people say people are really lucky, and no, they're not. They just make good choices and they work hard, and they're going to get luckier if you work hard. So sooner or later, you're going to get luckier.
I heard that saying every week of my life. So that is definitely the Paul Berry saying. Faith is a huge part of your life. How did you tell me about your faith and how you were raised and the development of that?
Well, we were raised in a Methodist church. We did go to church a lot. I don't know if we went every Sunday, but we went to church a lot. And we went to church camps and Sunday school. And so we were raised with that background. But it just kind of seemed after we got married and you kids were with us and whatnot, we still went to the Methodist church, but just didn't seem like there was any meat in it. And, we just kind of changed our ways and started going to a fundamentalist church here. And it's been you and Dusty have helped guide us in that too. So that's been a great savior.
Awesome. I think making everything in life more real and approachable is important. So fun question, breakdown of me and my personality. How much do you think I'm Paul Berry versus Jane Berry? Because listeners, my dad and my mom are like 180 in personalities, and that's probably why mom is able to put up with dad. So what do you think?
Oh gosh, this is really easy. From an academic perspective, 90% your mother. From a competitive standpoint, 90% myself. And work ethic, I would say it's 50-50. So Yeah, and from a kindness and generous standpoint, I would say it's 90% your mother also.
That's very sweet of you to say. I think I'm the unpleasant part of me, like the type A, driven, setting goals. It's you and me are like a carbon copy of each other, Dad. So we're both those. But competitive, I think you're right. We both hate to lose. And I think that's been formative in our athletics, both of us. Tell me about you and your competitive edge and how that drove you just in your life.
Well, we just competed in so many different things when we were growing up, skiing and, you know, racing dirt bikes, racing mountain bikes. And I think, from a competitive standpoint, this saying kind of works for both of us, I think I like this saying, I don't mind not winning, but I hate losing. And so, it's kind of like yourself, you never played golf or a ski race for second place. You won 7 state championships, and that's by yourself. And from a competitive standpoint and an academic standpoint, you probably remember your lead in the Big 12 championships in Texas when you played golf for OU, and academically you were named top 10 freshman at OU and named academic All-American. And you just had to be a great time manager to get to this level. And so all that, all of these, the academic end and the competitive standpoint, they just all go together.
100%. And I can hugely thank my parents for making that happen and instilling that in me, the competitive edge for sure. Well, Dad, I will tell you, I think I love you more than life. You're a class act. And to be honest, this is the most I've ever heard you tell about yourself, which much prying from me. I learned a lot, and I loved to hear everything about you. I love you to pieces. I emulate so much of you in my life. You're my favorite guest by far. And we always leave the Forefront 5 with 5 key takeaways. So let's go for 5 things athletics and in a life of athletics, of great wins and losses. What's it taught you to share with our listeners?
Well, I love you too, Betsy. You're just a real joy. I've got 5 things that I think are important. Number 1 is never give up. And along with that is every time you fail, you win. Every time you fail, you learn something. So you do win, even when you fail. Strive for perfection and at least be the best that you can be. If the best you can be is a C student, always be a C student, but do always perform to the best of your abilities. And number 3 is really important, because I just have had too many friends that, not real close friends, but I hear people say, I'm just scared to retire because I don't know what to do with myself. And so number 3 is work hard, but play harder. So, and your mother and I, we play really hard still. And number 4 is married for life. Your mother is my best friend.
45 years in August. And I love that he gets choked up about mom. And number 5 is what, Dad?
Know where you're going.
Yep, for sure. So Dad's faith has driven him, his competitive edge has driven him, and his faith in God has driven him. And quite frankly, I think it's one of the reasons he doesn't have fear of consequences or dying. So Dad, I love you so much. I hope my listeners have enjoyed this fascinating man as much as I get to enjoy him every day. This has been another episode of the Forefront 5.